global series of green webinars where we are exploring different pathways that exist in the green industry. Now, before we started planning these webinars, I'll just share a little bit about what I thought the green industry was about. So I thought it was really about keeping the environment safe, keeping the ocean safe, ensuring you recycle your waste, and maybe studying geography or environmental management. But it just dawned on me that whatever your skills are, you can find expression in the green industry, which is basically around, contributing to a more safer and sustainable world. And so what we've done today is to bring a diverse panel of experts who are working at the intersection of the green industry in finance, in real estate, in even environmental management, which are the areas we know, and even public health. And they'll be sharing their experiences and just exposing you to the roots into the green industry. This webinar is part of a lineup of activities that British Council is organizing to add value to COP26, which is the climate change conference of the United Nations. And we hope that, after this webinar, you'll be able to, take your skills further and contribute to, a safer and more sustainable world. Once again, thank you for joining us. I'll just invite my next presenter, Fakao Burima. He is a green jobs specialist at the International Labour Organization, and he will be talking to us about existing and futuristic green jobs, where the green jobs are, what the opportunities are, and how you can build the skills that would help you to effectively transition into this industry. Thank you for your time and have a good time with us.
Hello, can you hear me? Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you very much, Tochi. Sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing your name the right way. I'm Faisal Burema. I'm working at the International Labour Organization as a technical specialist on green jobs. So my presentation today will be on green industry, what job exists and where. Okay. I don't know how it works. Okay, thank you. So the presentation will cover the following points. I will start by just explaining what a green job is and what it is not, according to the ILO statistical definition. Because nowadays, we don't have a universal definition for green jobs. Sometimes it may change from one institution to the other. So I will give the ILO statistical definition of green job. And talk about where this new green job will come from and the impact of this shift from, let's say, a conventional economy to green economy, the impact of this shift on industry and employment, and what will be the skills response to that, because skills will play a fundamental role in this transition, and talk about what and how is the ILO creating job in this area. So I will talk about our, let's say, our framework for that. For that, we have the so-called ILO guidelines on just transition to environmental sustainable economies and societies for all. And I will show some country examples and give you a list of ILO publication on this topic. So what is a green job? So according to the ILO statistical definition of green jobs, the first thing for us to consider a job like a green job, it should first be a decent job. And decent job, according to the ILO, the International Labor Organization standards. So a decent job is a job which can give you a fair revenue, a job in which you will be treated equally as the others, so no discrimination. It should be a job in which you will have the right to be organized in association, the right to bargain collectively, the right to have social protection for you and your family. So for ILO, the first condition to consider a job as a green is to be first a decent job according to the international labor standards. So once the job is decent, then now there is two possibilities for a job to be green. So it can be green either by the product which is being produced. So it means that your output, the output of your job, it's a green product. For example, you can produce a solar panel. For example, this is the product itself which is green. So this could be a green job, or a green job could also be a green job just by the way you are producing. So which means that it is a process, which means that you are using processes, it can be industrial, the processes you are using, they are low carbon processes. It means that you will not use a lot of energy, you will produce less waste and so on. So the green, it can be either by the product itself, which is coming as an output, or by the way you are producing it. So it's employment in environmental processes. And there it requires a lot of, let's say, skills in using green technologies. So the working definition for green jobs according to the International Labor Organization, so it is a job which is decent first. So it can be in a specific sector like agriculture, manufacturing, construction, forestry, and so on, which in addition to being decent, it can also improve energy and raw material efficiency. It can limit greenhouse gas emissions, minimize waste and pollution, protect and restore ecosystem, and support adaptation to the effects of climate change. So we could see that even if you are working in these sectors, if the job is not decent, then according to the ILO working definition, where the job couldn't consider as green. So here, just to give you an example on this definition of ILO, on what a green job is. For example, here on this figure, so you can see different type of activities. And you have these different arrows. So here at the upper side, you have how deep is the work. And at you will see what would be the environmental impact of such an activity. For example, here, if you see just at the bottom here, someone cutting trees. So maybe someone would think that this person, since he is working in the forestry, he's doing a green job. It is not a green job. Why? Because if you see the person, he's not wearing any individual protection. So he's not wearing glasses, he's not wearing gloves. So this is not a decent job, because for the decent job, the safety and security at the workplace is something very important. So he's cutting a tree, which is not something sustainable, but also it's not a decent job because it's not protected. If you take, for example, here at the lower side, someone working in the automotive industry. Okay, generally in automotive industry, okay, salaries are very good. People, they have, let's say, occupational safe and health and safety. They will have social protection. But here he's producing, let's say, conventional engines using diesel or petrol, let's say. So this couldn't be considered as a green job, but it is decent because all the requirements in terms of decent job here are fulfilled. And if I take at the other side, at the environmental impact side, at the upper side, you will see someone working in the waste. Okay, the environmental benefit of working in the waste could be higher, but in terms of decent job, this person is not protected. It seems like an activity, just putting hand directly in the trash, so we couldn't consider that as a green job. But here, if we take on the a green arrow here, for example, you would see someone working, installing solar panel, wearing all kind of, let's say, individual equipment and protection, or close to that, you will see two persons working, let's say, in a municipal waste collection with all the equipment which are needed. So just to show that, to be considered as a green job according to the ILO definition, the two conditions will need to be fulfilled. So with the first is it should be a decent, and the second, it should be green either by the product itself or either by the process. So here just a slide to explain what a green job is. And if you see here green and decent, let's say the green square, so it's only when you are here that you could consider your activity as a green job. But for example, if you are at the gray zone where the activity is neither green and nor decent, then according to the ILO definition, this is not a green job. So a job could be decent but not green, a job could be green but not decent, but to be green job according to the ILO definition, it needs to have the two conditions, to be green and decent at the same time. So in practice, where could we find these kind of jobs? So first, it can be in process. So in industrial processes, whenever you are using processes which could reduce intensity, whenever you are using processes which are eco-efficient, whenever you are reducing and recycling waste, you can find green jobs there if the condition of decent job are also. It can be directly on the product coming from your work. So for example, it can be organic agricultural products. It can be green textile, for example. It can be ecotourism services, green construction, but it can also be immaterial. It can be services like green financing. Today, there is a whole offer, a package of green finance activities. And the third one could also be something related to natural conservation, which are related to the ecosystem services. The activity would help to improve ecosystem services or natural resource management, sustainable natural resource management, and so on. So where will these new green jobs come from? According to a global, let's say, survey, a study done by the International Labour Organization in 2018, which is the World Employment Social Outlook, we could green jobs can come from some specific sectors such as renewable energy, manufacturing, the construction sector, repair and rental services. So all these sectors are a good example, and we would see that in the coming slide, how the green job creation potential in this specific sector is high. And I will explain you in the coming slide, these 24 million jobs are coming from. So the 24 million jobs is coming from, let's say, it is a scenario that if the world economy, and based on the scenario that this the 2-degree goal, which has been defined during the COP, if it is respected, then it can help bringing net employment gains of 18 million jobs. How this would happen if this 2-degree goal, according to the scenario, it will create 24 million jobs, but it could also displace 6 million jobs. So, and here you have the job creation potential in these three, for example, specific sectors, which are construction, manufacturing, and renewable energy. And how this will impact the employment. The reality is that when you do this shift, you could create new jobs in the sector, the mentioned sector, but some of the existing jobs will be substituted. For example, if you take the transport using only, let's say, conventional engine and, let's say, conventional energy, if there is a shift, then some jobs on this conventional sector based on fossil energy might be substituted by other jobs. But some of the jobs coming mainly from a very carbon-intensive industry could be completely eliminated. The thing is that it will be a net job gains. Why? Because the number of jobs which could be creating are much more higher than the number of jobs which could be eliminated. So within the ILO, a global research has been performed, which was called as for a greener future. And this global research has 32 countries, so you can see the countries on the map, was to see what will be the key financing skills for a green future jobs, which will be the type of jobs which will be created, and what are the kind of skills which will be required, let's say, to create these jobs. So this global survey was based on a list of scenarios. For example, if they took the global economy and they did a scenario on, for example, renewable energy, which they call energy sustainability scenario, what they will do the scenario and they will connect it to a global input-output model of the world economy, and to see what would happen if such a scenario became a reality. So here you could see that if the energy scenario at the time horizon of 2030 in place, then you can see risk of job destruction and also the opportunity to create jobs. So in terms of risk, 2 million, so this is at the global level, could be destroyed if workers are not reskilled into new occupation. So, but if they are, then this some of these 2 million of jobs could be, let's say, a concern. So 5 million jobs located, but at the other side, if you try to see the creation on this sustainable energy scenario, 20 million new jobs created. But to be able to do that, then training will be needed, skilling will be needed, and the 5 million jobs which are at high destruction, with reskilling and upskilling activity, these 5 million jobs could be reallocated. So which means that for this scenario, you could see for a risk of destruction of 7 million jobs, the opportunity to create a new job is around 25 million jobs. I will not go in detail, but here is just to show you in this scenario how the estimation and the calculation has been done. So it really go in the different subsectors and sectors which are linked, or which are, let's say, linkages with the sustainable energy sectors. So you can see it can be building and related trade works, it can be the mining, it can be market-oriented skilled workers. And here on this, see the new jobs which will be creating for each sector or subsector, the new job which will absorb the laid off workers from, let's say, the risky part, and also the number of jobs destroyed but which could be reallocated, and the number of jobs which will be destroyed but which will not be reallocated. The same example has been also done on circular economy, which means that it is a sustainable waste management. It means that all the waste are being recycled at global level. And here we can see that the risk of job destruction is much more higher. It's around 1 million, but this is at global level, with 20 million jobs which could be destroyed if the workers are not reskilled, and 49 million which could be reallocated. But at the other side, the opportunities for potential is higher. You can see it's 78 million jobs with 29 million new jobs and 49 million jobs which could be absorbed thanks to reskilling and upskilling. So we could see in all these scenarios that reskilling and upskilling would really, and the training would really play a role if we would like to do such a transition from, let's say, a conventional economy to a greener economy. So what will be the changing and in terms of emerging occupation level? So if I take, according to this report, the key sector in which the green job potential creation is higher, such as renewable energy, construction, manufacturing, agriculture, and forestry, we can see the nature of the existing job now. For example, if you take the case of renewable energy, the one of the most significant sector for development is closely relating to existing trade. So the example of a new and changing occupational profile, which could be created by skill level. So where you see MSL is it means medium skill level, and where you will see HSL, it's a high skill level. So in terms of medium skill level, in the case of renewable energy, the new profiles would be like, let's say, solar photovoltaic, wind turbine, biomass system installers, technician to do that, technician to manage, let's say, wind field, and so on. In terms of very high skilled level requirement, it's more engineers and system designers, which will also overlap with other manufacturing. So I will not go in all the details, but on this slide, you will see for each of these specific sectors, you can see the nature and extent of occupational change to date, and example of new and changing occupational profile. In terms of industry likely to grow and retraining and upskilling needs, if you take skill levels, so you have low skilled occupation, medium skilled occupation, and high skilled occupation. You have the nature of change, which will be a change in occupation in a generic way in the case of low skilled occupation, which means that it will not require a very high level training. It is something that people, the typical skills response could just be the learn by doing. So people could learn these things on let's say short time period or through upskilling programs. So typical example would be the people, let's say, working in the, let's say, waste collection, dumps, and so on. The second level is medium skilled occupation. These are some of the new green occupation where significant changes to some existing occupation in terms of technical skills and knowledge are required. So this could be short to longer upskilling and reskilling programs. It can be done through, for example, technical vocational education and training courses. And this typical example for this medium skilled occupation, it can be wind turbine operators, it can be solar panel installers, and so on. It can be roofers, technician in heating, and so on. And for the high skilled occupations, here it's the kind of skill which will require, let's say, a university degree and a longer upskill programs. And the kind of occupation, it can be like agricultural meteorologists, it can be climate change scientists, energy auditors, energy consultant, and so on. So we could see that the industries which are likely to grow and retraining and upscaling needs, we can see it in terms of level of skill, the typical skills which could be adopted, and a typical example of occupation. So within ILO, to bring, let's say, a response to such a shift from conventional to green economy, in 2015, ILO has adopted, the tripartite consultant, so ILO and its consultant adopted the just transition to environmentally sustainable economies and societies for all. So what does it mean? It means that when you would like to do such a transition, it is true that you would like to create jobs. So you have to ensure that job and incomes gains are maximized. But at the other side, you need to minimize your risk of job and income losses. And there are some vulnerable people who could be negatively affected. And for those persons, you will need to develop, let's say, a social protection package to protect the person who will be negatively impacted by such a transition. So the aim here is to generate and to let's say, to do the transition economies who will generate lower emissions and the lower environmental impacts. And at the other side, environmental quality and resilience will improve. So could someone mute his mic?
Sorry. Paka, I think we're out of time on this. So if you could just round up in 1 minute. So I'm not
Okay.
sure if that's why you were muted.
So,
Yeah, it's just round up. And then we can share the slides with.
okay.
Sorry to rush you.
So no worries for that. Yeah, here you have the guidelines for the just transition, but I will not go through them since the time will not be enough. Maybe I will just conclude with this slide to show you some typical example of green jobs promotion and just transition. So these are activities performed by the international labor organizations. So it can be either a program for green jobs, for say country and global studies. It can be vocational training of solar technician. It can be the promotion of green entrepreneurship, and ILO had a dedicated training program, which is the starts and initiate your business. And within this program, you have the so-called green business booklet, who can show you how to develop a green business idea and how to implement it. You can also create green jobs through public employment programs. For example, here on this screen, you can see a public employment program which can create really community assets and support sustainability and resilience. You can also develop, let's say, cultural approaches. For example, here you have the example of the Zambia Sustainable Enterprises, a program developed by the International Labour Organization. So thank you for your attention, and yeah, I will be happy to discuss, or if there is any question, I will be happy to try to reply to your question. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Faisal. That was really quite informative. We really got to understand about green and decent jobs, especially the point of how it's important to have decency within job creation. Also, you gave examples of green jobs and how they can be created. And I think some statistics that you gave, which were about, how many jobs have the potential to be created. You said 24 million jobs. And this will also displace 6 million jobs. And I think this is quite important to realize that we shouldn't be scared of innovation and change. But instead, yes, there might be some displacement, but obviously it has the potential to create a lot more jobs. And I think this gives us a great introduction to the next panel, which is called Green Practice and Opportunities. And we're trying to dig a little deeper to understand and expose the entrepreneurial and innovative skills needed to identify, seize opportunities, and create strategies to respond to green challenges across a variety of sectors. And on this panel, it's a panel discussion. And on this panel, we're going to have Dr. Adetuo Mustafa, Temilade Salami, Funto Boniface, Chizom Nwako, and of course, myself. I'll be the moderator for this session, Olamide Udoma Ejo. And I'll just do a quick introduction of myself, and then we'll start asking questions and get our panelists on board. So I'm Olamide Udoma Ejo. I'm the Executive Director of Lagos Urban Development Initiative. It's a non-profit organization based in Lagos, and we focus on research, advocacy, and policy documents around sustainable Lagos, from Lagos to becoming a sustainable city. We look mainly at transportation and public space. So I don't want to take up too much time because we don't have that much. So we will go first into the panelists. So I'm hoping they can all come on screen. Do we have any other panelists on at the moment? Okay, well, we'll start with Funto Boniface as the person that's online right now. We can just start to have a discussion until the other panelists come in. So as an introductory question, I'd just like you to talk a little bit about how has green practices featured in your career?
Thanks, Olamide. So my name is Funto Boniface, as I've been introduced, and I run a waste collection and recycling company called Chanjadati, which in Hausa just means to change dirt. And what we do again is very in the scope of what we're talking about is very green. So we are promoting circular economy, and we're trying to make sure that we collect recyclable materials in our environment. There's statistics that says that every year in Nigeria, over 64 million tons of waste ends up in our landfills and in our gutters and in our waterways. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is to sort of divert this waste from the landfills and the waterways and our drainage systems into manufacturing channels where it can be reused or recycled. I also run a non-for-profit called Waste Africa, where we're also promoting support of different initiatives to support, again, this whole green enterprise. So everything from supporting waste pickers. We have a program called Support 10,000 Waste Pickers. We have another initiative called Bottles for Books, where we have children going to school and they're paying their fees with recyclable waste. And then we have something called Cash for Trash recycling hubs, where we're establishing recycling hubs around Abuja and now Lagos, where people can actually go and exchange their trash in lieu of cash, and where they can actually extract value from their waste. So in terms of the job aspect of things, we currently have over 200 both full-time and part-time workers, and it's everything from collection from homes or offices to actually people who manually work on our machines, to even the women who manually remove the covers and the labels from some of our PT and material. So again, we're creating those green jobs, and that's how we sort of fit into the mold of job creation.
Great, thank you.
But I see some of my other panelists have joined, so
yes, thank you. Yes, they have. Fantastic. Thank you all for joining. I know there was a bit of technical difficulties, but I'm glad we're all here now. Okay, so I'm going to ask the same question to all the panelists, just as a way to introduce yourself and of course, your career and what you've been doing so far. So I'd like to ask the same question to Dr. Adetuwa Mustafa. How have green practices featured in your career so far?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I actually started my career as an environmental scientist. I write biological science in the university, and it was in 1992 that the first International Earth Summit reawakened my interest actually to go full-blown into environmental science. After the Earth Summit, there was a lot of challenge, a lot of issues on environmental protection. So I took interest in it and I started writing poems and I started reading a lot about it. So I applied for some jobs and I got into the energy industry, where I started as an environmental scientist, looking at impact assessments of our projects on the environment. Then I'm moving into waste management, trying to look at how do we had a lot of waste. It was then in Niger Delta, in Delta State to be specific. How do we manage our waste? We wanted to build a landfill site, and it was difficult getting land. Nobody wants to give their land for waste, for people to just dump waste. Even though we don't have engineered landfill sites in the country, people were converting open dumps into landfill. They are just dumping waste. So because of that challenge, we now thought of looking holistically into how to manage waste, actually reducing waste at source and recycling. Then after that, I took interest in how does environment impact.
Oh, I think we've lost you. Oh, I think we've lost Dr. Adetuwa. I think internet connection is not our friend today. Okay, so I'll still ask the same question to Timilade Salami. How has green practices featured in your career?
Hello?
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry, Dr. Mustafa, we'll come back to you soon.
Okay, sorry about that.
My name is Timila. The founder of Eco Warriors. It's a professional network of environmentalists who are creating environmental change through tree planting, ocean climate change awareness, and environmental education. I studied marine biology at the University of Lagos. That was what first my interest to moving my career to an environmental sector. And I would say, how does green practices come in for the work that I do and in my organization? Because we're a non-for-profit, currently we don't have like people that we pay, right? But we have volunteers, over 1,000 volunteers in about 6 states. And I would say that one of the things that I see is that there are many young people out there who have even gone to school to study environmental related course, but they do not know how to put them in practice. So over time, some of the designs and projects that we've had or that we currently have, they've been able to help those people hone their skills to contribute to some of the outcomes that we've had over time. So for somebody like me that studied marine biology, I would say that going to school didn't really give me an idea of what kind of industry I can work in after I graduate. But starting Eco Warriors has actually exposed me to so many things, knowing I can become an environmental policy specialist. You can even get to own a recycling organization where you get to recycle plastic and all of that. So I would say that while we do not currently pay anybody, for green jobs and all of that, but we have over 1,000 people who are currently in Eco Warriors, and every time we get to talk about different things in the green space and how it is very possible to actually go for a green career even after you've not studied environmental related. So I would say that's how we've been able to just create green practices in what we do.
Great, thank you so much. And then last but not least, Chizam Nwonku, same question. How has green practices featured in your career?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yes.
So my name is Chizam Nwonku. First of all, I'm a senior scientific officer at the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, specifically the Environmental Sciences and Technology Department. So I work on science and technology related environmental policies. I've done that for almost 10 years. I'm currently the desk officer for the Nigerian Clean Tech Innovation Program. It's a program that looks at greening different sectors within the Nigerian economy. And currently, a very new project that is very dear to my heart, the Nigerian textile, fashion, and innovation project. So this project is basically targeting the fashion industry, greening it, promoting environmental practices. It's a sector that has kind of been neglected. So we're trying to see how we can bring science, technology, and innovation into it. So basically, my work has been about policy formulation. I've been privileged to work on national science, technology, and innovation policy. I was part of the group that formulated the national policy on solid waste management. So I actually understand the process of policy formulation and how that is very important in creating green jobs within the Nigerian space. Aside all of that policy, also I'm the founder, convener of the Skilled Women Initiative. It's the NGO that actually provides jobs for vulnerable people, especially refugees and IDPs in Nigeria. So we create jobs through recycling, upcycling, textile waste, and all of that. So we are actually focused on creating jobs for that category of people using like a green economic process. And then I also am the creative director of Sea Luxury. Sea Luxury is a social enterprise, a fashion enterprise that recycles textile waste. So all of our products, processes, our new bags, our shoes, our hats are all made from textile waste. Recently, we got we were second runner up at the AFDB competition for green practices in the fashion industry. So basically, my work has just been centered about looking for practical ways to infuse green jobs into sectors that are not maybe very well known. And then, of course, with my policy background, I'm able to understand how policy plays an important role in all areas of the economy, be it agriculture, be it clean technology, engineering, waste management. It's very important that we understand that policies are actually very important for us. Yeah, so that's a summary of what my work is like.
Great. So, I mean, really, the CV of everybody here is, I don't know, like 100 pages long, because even though some of you might be young, really young, and some a little bit older, you have already achieved so much in your careers, and it's quite fantastic. From, you know, people, I mean, some of our speakers are poets, writers, in the energy sector, in the waste sector. So it's really fantastic to have a all-women panel and with so much experience. So thank you all for joining. We've had a number of questions that came in when people signed up. So I'm also going to try and squeeze some questions in. We have about 20 minutes to go through a number of questions, so hopefully we'll get through it. So I'll just also ask that we try to keep our answers as short as possible. I know there's so much to say, but try to keep them short so that we can get through as many questions as possible. So, Dr. Adetwa, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic, great. So globally, how have you seen the energy sector change from fossil fuels to green energy? And is this transition happening in Nigeria? And can we encourage it to become faster?
Okay, so globally, one of the things that has happened after the Rio de Janeiro and the Earth Summit was that globally, we have the International Petroleum Industry Environmental Conservation Association, IPIECA. This industry was actually formed at the instance of the United Nations Environmental Protection Agency in 1974. And what they look at is environmental protection and social performance for the oil and gas industry. And the beauty of this association is that it has both the upstream, people exploring, and the downstream, where you have the marketing. And it is the body that is the main means of communication with United Nations. So the industry actually have a strong role in the COP21, where you have the Paris Agreement. And so what the industry has actually started doing is that, let's start from our home. How do we decarbonize the world? First is by actually reducing our own carbon footprint, improving on our operations. Because this is an industry-led thing, there are things like having a sustainability report published every year. So you have a lot of multinationals now publishing their sustainability reports. And don't forget, the people working in the energy industry, in oil and gas and fossil fuel, they are also human beings. They live on the planet Earth. So they don't have a mass to live. So if we don't all contribute to protection of the climate, we will all be doomed. All our future generation will be doomed. So the industry is strategically making a shift of energy transition from fossil fuel to cleaner form of energy. You now have investments in renewables, in wind, in solar, and in hydrogen. This is happening globally. Talking about Nigeria, coincidentally, last week there was the Nigerian Gas Summit, and the GM of NNPC said something about towards gas-powered economy in 2030 for Nigeria. And you need to understand where Nigeria is coming from. There is the energy ladder that people, almost 40%, whether we believe it or not, globally in people, and that in low and medium income countries, are still cooking with biomass. You cook with biomass, which is the lowest in the energy model, the ladder. So then you have gas, which is a cleaner one. So the move of Nigeria is, first of all, to move from energy polluting the highly polluting fossil fuel to cleaner one, like gas. So that is why Nigeria, the NNPC has said Nigeria is moving towards more use of our gas, and then hydrogen, blue hydrogen, which is the hydrogen from natural gas, which is quite different from green energy. There is also a focus to have renewables such as wind and solar. But you know, being the kind of country we have, infrastructure to transport, to store them, to move them to our rural areas are still challenges. So to answer your question in brief, there is a deliberate effort by the industry, the energy industry, to move into renewables. But you also realize that the world population is increasing. And the International Energy Agency have actually realized that even by 2040, fossil fuel like gas will still contribute about 40% of the energy need of the world. There are still about 20% of the people worldwide who do not have access to electricity. You want to improve quality of life. So, and there is population increase. So there is a concerted effort to move into cleaner one, but the energy transition is happening at a pace maybe faster in some parts of the world than in other. But it is something that is happening, and we need to keep the focus, the dialogue through the international panel, through the IPCC, and through the United Nations, that we all commit to it and we understand what are the barriers some countries may have and how can we unblock the barriers to make it faster in such countries.
Great, thank you so much. I think we really got a good understanding of maybe what the blockages are, especially in middle income, low income countries. Thank you for that. When it comes to moving to greener energy. So now I'd like to talk to Temilade. So I've been doing a little bit of research. I'm reading your profile, and I can sense that you're passionate about education. You are also a poet and a writer. How have you used these skills to reach young people and educate them about taking care of the environment?
Thank you. I would say that at the core of everything is education. And regardless of whatever processes you want to put in place, regardless of whatever designs or projects you want to put in place, if people are not properly educated, they wouldn't know what to do, right? And one of the gaps that we discovered is that in our educational system in Nigeria, we do not have any subject that is related to environmental education, right? Starting from that kind of level, going to primary school till you graduate secondary school, or except you study an environmentally related course like mine, you probably never have an idea of what is environmental sustainability, or what does that have to do with your own future, or how does that relate to your personal life, right? So one of the things that I try to do is use my writing skills to write simple books, to write books for kids, and also put out content for people who are older like myself, who didn't study any course environmentally related like mine. Because how do you explain climate change to a 3-year-old child? How do you explain climate change to even somebody who is 18 years old? Everybody knows that the weather is hot, but what is the reason? Why is the weather hot? Do they understand the ozone layer? So one of the things I try to do is to bring it down to their level, with, like we call it, layman's language, and make everybody understand that this fight is for everybody, and do not see it as, oh, it's just the people in the recycling industry, people who are passionate like me, who should be fighting for these things. Everybody has a role to play, right? And I would say that for my poetic skills, I do poetry for sustainable development, majorly for the environment, right? And one of the things that I've seen over time is how artistic skills, music, poetry, writing can actually influence people. And these things are basic universal language. Anybody around the world listen to Wizkid, anybody around the world listen to the band, they listen to all of our artists, Nigerian artists. You can go to Kenya and hear these people listen to our songs. So these things are very connecting, and they are not political, they are not geographical, they transcend beyond where you are. So imagine writing a poem and somebody abroad gets to see it, they're like, oh, okay, so this is what climate change is all about, right? So you're passing the message, but you're not keeping it in the borders of where you are. So I'm in Nigeria, I'm writing poetry. Anybody can pick up my book, they can pick up my works outside the country and get to know the basic things about the environment. And like I said, I believe that environmental education is like the basics to even understanding anything, right? So that is what I've tried to do with my books. I've currently written 2 books, and they are for ages 3 to 12. And I'm also looking at writing some other materials that people of my age can actually read, 18 and above, so that we can all fight this fight together. So when next you are out there and you see the sun scorching your skin, right, you would know that these are the reasons. You would know how to prevent them. And when you get back to your office, you know how to tell your people at work that, guys, we need to reduce some of the things that we are doing, and also plan like an environmentally sustainable means to just reduce all the things that we use in our office. So this is the reason why I'm actually doing all the things I'm doing with my writing and also my poetic skills, because these are universally connecting agents.
Great, thanks so much. That's quite interesting. Actually, one of the questions that came from the audience was about the creative industry and how we can use the creative industry to influence environmental change. So thank you so much for that answer. So now I'd like to go to Funso Borifis. You're doing a lot of innovative things around waste management, for example, recycling pure water and nylon film into pallets. How has the circular economy idea or theory influenced your work in waste management?
Sure. Thanks, Olamide. I mean, the main premise for us is we definitely want to make sure that people start thinking outside of the framework of linear economy to circular economy. And so basically what that means is, typically linear economy just means you take raw materials, you make something out of it. After you're done with it, you toss whatever it is that you've used. So for an example is, this bottle now that I'm holding in front of me, this PET bottle, right? Usually you'll see people who will, drink after they're done drinking the water. So the manufacturers have, created the plastic and they put water inside, right? A lot of us will just take this bottle of water. After we're done drinking the bottle of water, we'll toss the plastic. Most people don't know that 8 of these bottles actually could make a jersey, right? Or that this material can be used to make everything from like interlocking bricks to plastics in construction. So, and that is sort of the awareness that we're trying to raise. So there's a component around research and development. There's a component around, if I was just going to quickly mention the component around circular economy, right? There's a component around product design, where people can actually hone in their skills. One of the things that they're doing in, I think, Europe right now that is interesting, but it's a low-hanging fruit. Where you buy toothpaste, right? And toothpaste is usually in another box. It's usually in a box that has, in some places, some shops in Europe, for example, now they're throwing away the box. They're not even giving you the box. They're just putting the toothpaste out like that because people are thinking about product design. Or the people who are really going after thrifts now, thrift shops, because there's a whole demand around reuse. The organizations such as Rent the Runway in the US, where you don't have to buy couture dresses again. You can actually rent and return. Those are some of the things that people are starting to think about in terms of, let's not push this whole linear conversation, let's push the circular economy, which basically means we take something, we make something, and then once we use it, instead of throwing it away, we either reuse it, we repair, we recycle, or we what's the other one? Or we repeat. I think I mentioned repair. And so that's what is going on right now, where people are saying, we can channel this waste. Most of the materials that we're seeing, everything from petrochemicals in the earth to trees, for example, where you might trees are cut down right now to make paper, right? And once you get done with the book or whatever, you end up tossing the book, or the paper is burnt. The conversation now is like, how do we turn that paper into reused either new books or tissue paper or salvia paper? So this is one of the conversations that is going on right now, that for us, we're really looking at plastic and looking at how plastic can be used to sort of promote circular economy. But there are basically 7 core elements, and I just want to quickly read them out. It's to use waste as a resource, which is what we're doing. Is to actually rethink your business model. So I talked about, example is Rent the Runway. Is to team up with to create a joint value. So a lot of times, instead of doing something by yourself, you can look for ways to partner. So for example, someone like Chisom with her CIE, if I had a clothing store or I had a shop, which I know she does right now with her accessory business, and with the even work with IDPs, she sources materials from tailors and people who have fashion houses. So their scrap material can go into our process. So that's one of the things that people can do. You can strengthen and advance knowledge, incorporate digital technology. I mean, tech is the future. So how are people incorporating technology into their processes? We're looking at releasing an app soon, but I know a lot of my colleagues who have apps, to help them with everything from collection to different things. And then the last one is stretch the lifetime and price regenerative resources. So these are the core elements of circular economy that, even with, people who are looking at careers can, if they want to get involved, can start to look at, right, in terms of, getting involved. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to own a recycling company like I do, but you can, again, if you're a tech person and you want to get involved, there's room for you to get involved, use your skills. We need a lot of research and R&D around everything I've mentioned, right? How can people, if you're like a scientist or you're like an engineer, there are ways that you can get involved, right? Chisom had mentioned something about sustainable fashion, but it's not just fashion. We're talking about metals, we're talking about batteries, we're talking about this. I mean, anything you see in the earth right now. I always joke that even outside of human beings, everything is recyclable. And so another person responded and said, even human beings are recyclable because, not to be crude about it, but they turn into fertilizer or manure after a while. So again, everything is really, and those people who donate their bodies for science, right? It's all part of this thing. So again, there's room for growth, there's room for career, there's room for opportunity for jobs. So anybody who's looking at it, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to even go into like solar or the other areas that you can get involved and build a fulfilling career.
Great. That was really great, because it also touched on quite a number of different things there. So thanks so much for that. So I'm going to ask Chisom a question now. So I have two questions for you. So I'm going to try and blend them into one, and then we'll just ask one question round again, and then we'll have to stop, unfortunately. So first question is about for Chisom. Why have you focused on this idea of fashion and upcycling or recycling, and how have you made this into a career? We'll start with that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so basically, like I said, fashion, everyone just thinks fashion should just be make the clothes, wear the clothes, and buy the shoes. But there's so much more to it. Every one of us, we're all wearing clothes. So you can't even come out of your house without wearing a dress. But it kind of feels like fashion is at the background when it comes to greening and sustainability. But it's so important to know that the fashion industry actually is the second highest contributor to climate change. So it's something that is a space that needs more advocacy. So for me, first of all, is the advocacy and the awareness behind bringing fashion into the sustainable space and the green industry. And then secondly, first of all, before I went into the fashion space, I think I've always had like a flair for fashion, and I actually wanted to be, I wanted my business to be different, coming from the environmental policy aspect. I didn't just want to do what everyone else was doing. And then I noticed that, okay, I actually started off like making clothes first before I entered into the accessory industry, and understood the amount of waste that is generated from just making one, skirt and blouse. It is so much. Where do those things end up? Okay, where my store is situated, there are heaps and heaps of textile waste. A lot of people are collecting plastic waste, but there's nobody literally collecting the fashion waste. So that actually spurred my into, what can we do with this waste? And so for everything that we do as a brand, every single accessory we make is made from textile that has been either cut off, or the remaining part of your Ankara that you don't want to use anymore, you give it to us, we construct it to something new. And then those other simple parts, we actually weave them into the women at the camp are now weaving them into mats, foot mats, tablecloths, and all of that. Funto is actually a partner, and all of her face mask and everything that she uses for all her projects are made by the women at the camp from upcycled, recycled textile. Now, what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot to be done within the fashion space. It's a space that is not so open as plastic. So textile waste is not something that is so open and vast that everybody knows. How can we convert a textile waste? In Europe, they're converting textile waste into building materials. They're converting them into different things. So how can we in Nigeria start to convert our own textile waste? We actually outgrow clothes. You can wear a dress. these days, because of Instagram, people wear dresses. I want it on Instagram. I can't wear it again. They don't wear it anymore. Stuff like that. So we just keep piling up all those old clothes, old shoes. How do we recycle, upcycle, do all those kind of things? Then for us at C, what we have tried to do is be innovative. So we have this product called the C3Rs. So it's repair, revamp, and restyle. So if your dress, you notice that when you carry a handbag, it starts peeling off at the sides and all of that. So you bring it to us, we will style it for you. You don't have to discard it or throw it away. And of course, when we style, you can use it for that 5 years, 10 years. So those are the kind of things, and we actually charge you for it, because we're trying to tell you that, okay, upcycled, recycled things also be high class. It's not because you think they're made from waste, they should be, priced lower. So that's part of what has actually spurred me into creating like a job sector for textile waste, leather waste, and everything fashion. So like my earrings, I always wear one piece everywhere I go. So my earrings are made from textile waste, my wallets, everything around me is practically made from textile waste. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm going to rush you. It's just that we're running out of time. We came on, not our fault. Last speaker was a bit long, so we came on a bit late. So we have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to ask one question. It's like a, fire round. Everyone just has like a second, not a second, but a bit of time to just answer the question. And so my question is, what do you think is important to take Nigeria to the next step in terms of encouraging green jobs? So I know that some of you already even, employ a good number of people and are already in this space. And Sub-Saharan Africa, sorry. So Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa. So I just like to just throw that to all the panelists, and it'd be great to hear from things, for example, policy, education, those things that maybe have also inspired your career. I will stop talking and give you all 5 minutes each. So we'll start with Dr. Mustafa. Yes, please.
Okay, so for me, one thing we first of all need to do is that we need to check our education curriculum. Even though the core engineering that we've had, mechanical, electrical, chemical, will still be useful in the future, but they now need to be more focused on, they now need to be energy-focused engineering. So also is our biological science and other aspects. Take, for instance, Imperial College London stopped admitting people into master's degree in petroleum engineering. They are actually reviewing the curriculum of that course, because why are you training people for a future that is no longer going to be petroleum-based or fossil fuel-based? So looking at our looking at our educational curriculum is important. The other aspects that a lot of us have not really taken into is that the environment is not just environment, it's about our health and our survival. I'm the president, I'm the chair of the...
1 minute each, so we've got to keep it very short, sorry.
Okay, so International Society for Environmental Epidemiology Research. And it is a research that looks into how environmental issues impact health and things like air pollution. These are areas where we have a lot of people who are just one skill, need to move away from being just single skill into multi-skill and get more involved in research, because research will drive policy. And it is research data that will also help us to design intervention. So for me, our educational curriculum, and the other one is getting more involved in research that is related to our developmental needs.
Thank you so much. Okay, next, Temilade, 30 seconds. You can do it. I can't hear you. Are you muted?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so like I was saying, our educational system needs to start putting environmental education as a subject, right? So that we are only interested in the things that we've been taught or things that we actually see, right? You might like cooking because when you were doing home economics, you were frying donuts, you were doing all sorts like that. So imagine that we introduce environmental education into our educational system. It's no more alien to anybody who graduates. And also, I would say that some of the courses that people are currently taking in schools or schools are offering to students should actually be reviewed. If you are saying that we want the future to be green, then some courses that are not, I don't know how to put it, some courses that are not aligning to that kind of future, there's no point still offering such courses in school, knowing that this thing actually have like a greater effect on us. And I always like to say that until we bring it home, until we bring it to our personal level, people might not really be interested in environmental sustainability. So we have to start connecting it to health, we have to start connecting it to their future, and also jobs. So like I said, the three things, we have to look at our educational system and improve it, add environmental education as a subject, and also get people to be interested in the things that concern them health-wise and also for the future.
Great, thank you. And next, Funto.
Sure. I'm going to try and keep it very brief. I think the first one that I would say is we need to sort of bring the language down to the everyday man's language. So we use terms like circular economy, which is, I think, very elitist. A lot of people don't understand what that is. So the everyday Joe out there, we need to bring that language down. The other thing that I would say is that we all need to take personal responsibility. Right now, I think data says 2016, in West Africa, we had generated 176 million tons of waste. By 2050, that number would triple to 536 million tons of waste, right? It's each and every one of us are generating this waste and that are not sorting our waste. So I would again encourage that it's all comes back to also personal responsibility. We need to make a change ourselves before we can even tell anybody else to do that change. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Chisholm, last words.
Okay, for me, I'll just say wherever you are, whatever space you find yourself, try to know the policy, because we have a lot of policies that can actually help us, whether we're job creators or job seekers. So know the policy that fits you and then try to apply that within your space. Secondly, there are jobs everywhere. Just look at how we can make them greener and more sustainable. So if you're in fabric, look at how I can try to recycle my waste. If you're in production, you're in engineering, fashion, look at how it can be more sustainable with little waste production and reduction in CO2. So that's be like looking at how we can green every sector within the Nigerian economy. Thank you.
Great, thank you all so much. I'm so sorry that I've had to rush you. We now have to move to the next panel. So just a quick thank you to you again. It has been fantastic. And I hope that we've answered the questions from the audience through very speedy questions and answer session. And now we will have Baba Oladeji, who will be hosting the next panel discussion, titled Green Cities, Business, Investment and Policy. So I'm going to hand over to Baba now. Is he on the line? Great. Okay. So bye-bye from me and my panel, and over to you, Baba, and your panel.
Thank you so much, Olamide. Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Can I just confirm? Oh, great. So welcome everyone. You're welcome to panel 2 of the Green Careers webinar by British Council. I'm sure that our panelists are also, thank you so much for joining in. I'll introduce them shortly, but I wanted to give a short preamble and to really thank Olamide and her panel for queuing us in. Very importantly was how I liked how they rounded off with how research informs policy and how policy informs action. And I think most of all we're trying to do is really how all of this can manifest in the city space, or how we can manifest in form of infrastructure that we're building, and how policies can also support, and investment can support that as well. So we have a panel that with people with experience in these 4 key areas of interest for our listeners from different parts of the world. I would also like to take a cue from what the last panel rounded off at, which is I think we need to, reduce the language a bit. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is how much, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, how much these issues are just well next to our skin. So for instance, in Lagos where I live, there's the risk of flooding. Lagos is 1 meter above sea level. And at the risk of, some report says that Lagos is on the risk of going underwater by 2050. So we also have the searing heat sometimes because of the kinds of things that we've, some of the activities that we have done in terms of building, in terms of the buildings we've built, in terms of the way we've organized our city, in terms of the way we've planned it, in terms of the transport infrastructure we have prioritized and all of that. But because we don't have so much time, I'll just do a short introduction of myself. My name, like you heard earlier from Olamide, is Baba Oladeji. I'm an architect. We're one of the major culprits, by the way, to today's global warming. My work really, I'm Director of Design at Ministry of Architecture, and we don't try to look at design as just design. We try to look at it as planning-led design, and we have 4 pillars to our work, which is planning-led design, environmental advocacy, green capital, and lastly, retraining architects even in this realm of going towards a green future, because many of our architects, really younger architects, are trained in such a way that certain materials, certain practices that have led us to the point of global warming are perpetuated. So I would just like to, thankfully all our panelists are here. I would like each of our panelists to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Angel Adelaja Kuyes. Please introduce yourself briefly to our listeners. Thank you. Can you hear me, Angel? Hello? Okay, I think hello? I think while Angel is sorting that out, maybe Dennis, you quickly introduce yourself and we'll go around again.
Thank you so much. My name is Angel Adelaja Kuye.
Oh,
I
sorry,
am the Senior Special Assistant to the Governor of Ogun State on Agriculture. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, great, we can. Go ahead, we can. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Angel. It seems there's a... Okay, while we sort that out, why don't we take Dennis quickly? Angel will come back to you shortly. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine.
Hello,
so,
can you hear me?
Please, Dennis, go ahead. I think we'll sort that out.
Okay, great. I think the bandwidth is a bit poor. Yeah, so my name is Angel Adelaja Kuye. I am an urban farmer. And I am in the ag tech space as well. And I'm currently the Senior Specialist Governor of Ogun State on agriculture.
Nice to have you, Angel. Very glad to have you. So Dennis, I think you'll go next now. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Dennis, and I work as the Green Building Lead for IFC. I cover West Africa and Kenya, and I'm based in Accra, and our work covers us working with financial institutions, working with real estate developers, working with government to help create the enabling environment for green building development in these regions. All right, I'm happy to be on this program.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Can we have Olumide shortly to give a brief introduction of himself and what he's done and all of that? Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm hoping you can hear me clearly. My name is Olumide Lala. I'm a banker by profession, and I've spent the last 20 or so years in the capital markets, developing various projects and leading various projects in developing products and strategic implementation, especially on the tech side. The last 4 or 5 years or so, I have spent as the African Development Program Manager for Climate Bonds Initiative, which is actually a global organization, but situated in headquarters in London. And I have helped worked on policy advocacy as well as market developments for green finance all over Africa, but mainly to date in Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana, as well as South Africa.
Great stuff. So I'll just ask a question that I've been meaning to ask, because I mean, thanks a lot for that introduction, everyone. I mean, I got into architecture, and all of my education, I remember at the University of Lagos, was really about, you know, doing a good building really well. And well, I'd never got to, I think it was until my third year that I did something called landscape architecture. And that was maybe my first introduction to a bit of some greenness in the architecture that I was trying to do. I remember that it was until I studied under somebody called Andre Viljoen, and he had done this thing called, he had introduced some research on continual productive urban landscapes, which basically how food is the center of, how food should be at the center of how we plan our cities. It was until then I think I caught my first epiphany about how we can develop our cities around the idea of even food production, ecologically efficient energy, and all of that. So I wanted to ask our panel, you know, how did you get into all of this green space and this green economy? And I'll just probably start again with Angel. How did you get into what you're doing now with fresh produce, or fresh produce, yes. And again, being the SSA to the governor of Ogun State on agriculture.
So I'm gonna just turn off my video as I speak so you can hear me better.
Okay. That's okay.
For me, entering into this space was quite accidental, but it was because of the fact that, of course, in Nigeria, the agricultural sector has a lot of breaks in the value chain. It has a lot of things that are limited. And so one thing that you need to be able to do to ensure food security is to have a well-designed and properly designed food system and policies that aid that. For me, it wasn't environmentally driven, it was demand driven, meaning that I had perishable items that needed to get to my customers as fast as possible, and close to market as quickly as possible. And so once I got into the space and I started understanding the benefits of proximity to customers and starting to understand how, you know, people in other locations and even in the rural setting, people have fresh food. They have they eat healthier sometimes because the food that they're getting comes straight from the ground, you know, so it's actually a holistic thing. And I think it just got me into this rabbit hole of understanding that as much as we talk about agriculture being, you know, the new green gold, the reality is that agriculture is not that green to begin with. You know, if you think about it, it's one of the major sources of greenhouse emissions, you know, and especially in terms of land clearing. Agriculture accounts for more than 22% of greenhouse gases that are emitted. You know, so for me, it started becoming not just a need for me to be able to get closer to my customer, but it started to become a moral and religious thing for me because of the fact that, you know, when you're a kid, for those who are Christians, you remember in Sunday school that you learned that God's creation, God created it and he gave us dominion over, you know, everything on this earth, you know, and that means taking care of God's creation. And part of that means making sure that the environment is taken care of. And so when you realize that the thing that you love and the agriculture that you think that you're contributing to society with is actually also making it difficult for you to farm year on year because of the high carbon footprint that it bears, you start to wonder, what can you do differently? If you think about it, for those who are doing livestock production, that's about 44% of human-induced methane emission, and that's about 53% of nitrogen oxide emission. You know, so you start to wonder what's happening. What you realize is that there needs to be a level of harmony, and there needs to be a level of balance, you know, in agriculture. And so what you now start to think about is the fact that if those emissions are increasing the temperature year on year, temperature increase and that deforestation ultimately makes it harder for you to farm, because then when there shouldn't be, you have rising water levels, but you also have lack of rain, and so that's dead end for a farmer. So you being able to use, for example, if you think about it, you're using machinery, or you're using fertilizer, and those also aid, those also contribute to, nitric oxide levels, So you realize that the agricultural practices you're engaging in today are affecting your productivity and your ability to farm in the future. And if you start to think about that, you want to look for alternative methods. So for me, the biggest thing was, how do I now start to engage in urban agriculture, which was, if you think about a food system, you prioritize what you put in the rural areas and you prioritize what you try to do in the urban areas. And you focus on the most perishable items in the urban area, not just because of convenience, but also because these are things that can be done with as little space as possible. You help to reduce deforestation. I started Fresh Direct, and inside our shipping container, we could do the same amount that was done in a football pitch. And at the time that I started, it also was difficult because we weren't using solar. Now we're on solar, so it makes it a lot easier. But you have 5 levels where there would have been only 1. You're recycling water, so you're helping to reduce the amount of water waste that you engage in. And then you also are able to grow clean, beneficial produce using clean energy as well. So when you think about that, and then you think about technologies and innovations to help reduce the emissions for agriculture, you also think about using permaculture and also like making sure that you're into cropping and engaging in agroforestry. Like you can plant, teak trees in between in a certain distance where you can actually farm in between. There's ways where you can actually change the way in which you engage in agriculture to make it more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angel. I think you've got into many of the questions we're going to ask very soon. But anyway, it's okay. We'll just take the other from Olumde.
I'm just quite passionate about it.
So how did you get into, again, the question again is going around, how was it an epiphany? Like Angel said, for her, it was accidental. It was demand driven, and it was really based on how we could have more efficient systems. And I was really intrigued to hear that agriculture is one of even the most, but I don't want to use the word blackest or as an alternative or the opposite of green sectors to be working in. So Olumde, do you want to quickly tell us how you got in?
I think the word you're looking for rather than black is actually brown. So is either green or brown. Yeah, so that's probably the more conducive word you're looking for. So, well, how did I get into this space? Well, like I said, I've actually worked. I started life as a banker. I haven't studied accounting in university, and I've been in this space in the finance space for the last 30 years. I've spent the last 20 in the capital markets, which, as you know, is obviously the basis for capital formation. Now, Angel has spoken very passionately about agriculture, which obviously we talk about food security. You spoke about earlier on about being an architect, which obviously we're talking about building properties. So whether you're building properties, you're creating food, or you're building infrastructure such as roads, or creating energy production or efficiency, waste management, all of this stuff basically needs money. Yeah, we need money to be able to finance a lot of these assets. Now, the funny thing is, we're building roads today, and we are putting more cars on the road rather than actually building rail lines or metro lines. So, we are able to ferry more people using redesign our transportation means rather than what we do today. So we are going to have to build all of this infrastructure in order to develop Nigeria or Africa as it is. We need to industrialize, and in order to industrialize, the last thing we want to do is do the same thing that the West has done and make the same mistake. It is a fact that Africa generates only 4% of the greenhouse emissions, but we are the most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. The deserts are encroaching on us, which is affecting not just our food security, but also even our habitation. People are moving down from the north because the Sahara is increasing. So for me, how did I get into this? There's a number of things, but essentially is how do you finance all of this infrastructure in a sustainable way, such that we redivert a lot of the pension funds and create the opportunity to invest a lot of our pension money in more sustainable infrastructure. And that's effectively, from a capital markets point of view, how I got into the space. But we'll speak more about other things as we go along.
Sure. Thank you so much for keeping it very brief. So Dennis, you mentioned enabling environment earlier, and I just like, to know exactly how, because I mean, the question that came in was, IFC is supposed to be an organization in finance, and how have they got into green buildings? It's just a question from anybody. So do you want to quickly tell us how you got into the space? Sure.
Okay, so I think for me, it was also not really planned, just like the first speaker Angel mentioned, because my background, my educational background, didn't really prepare me for doing stuff within green buildings. But when I got interested in green buildings, I made sure when I was doing my graduate education, I focused on green building. Now with IFC, actually green buildings is, or climate plays a very big role in our work. We focus a lot on climate change and green buildings and all that stuff, because we believe that they have the capacity to erode all the developmental efforts that the World Bank Group is, bringing to developing countries. And one way of being able to tackle that is to tackle how people build, because within buildings, a lot of energy is used, a lot of water is used, and buildings also affect the poor. And if buildings are going to cost so much in terms of utility bills, then how can we achieve affordable housing and social housing for the poor? So in effect, we realized that we need to tackle it from a different point. We need to get all the stakeholders involved in order to tackle this pandemic.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dennis, for keeping it very brief. Again, I know we're racing towards the finish line, but we have questions from some of our listeners and or people who already registered for this webinar. And I'll just ask these questions. I'll just direct them at, I think the first question is directed towards Angel. It says, what policies/efforts are currently in action towards climate change in Nigeria? So that's for you, Angel, to answer. Yes. Okay, I think we can extend to 2:10. So yeah, that's good. We have some time for about 10 minutes. So Angel, did you hear what I said? Hello? Okay.
Do you want me to take that?
Okay, maybe Olumide, yes, if you can, please. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sure you've all heard about the Paris Agreement, and every country is actually signed up to the Paris Agreement. Of course, Nigeria being one of them, and we've got
yes,
national.
I did. I can speak from Ogun State's point of view. One of the things that
okay, I think we can hear Angel's voice now. I believe so. Is that okay? Please, Angel, please take it away then. Sorry again, Olumide, for the backlog, I think. Or you know what, Olumide, please take it away again. Sorry. I think
so. I was trying to make reference to national determined contribution, which basically has a voluntary as well as a compulsory element to it. And essentially, this is what the government is doing, what policies they're putting together, what efforts they're putting together to actually contribute to the reduction of global emissions and keeping the average temperature rise around the 1.5 degrees over the next 30 years, as in between now and 2050. So a lot of policies obviously are going into play to replan our infrastructure generally, right? But like I said earlier, It's about how do you provide opportunities for investors to invest in the right infrastructure, as it were. So one of the things that I had worked on within the capital markets is actually working with the SEC to provide and develop the rules around the issuance of green bonds, for instance. Bonds basically are debts that are tradable on the market. And effectively, not only have we got rules around that, we're now working in terms of the rules around actually investing in that, either locally or foreign investors. That's on the one side. Now, obviously, you will have. I'm sure a number of people are quite familiar with a lot of the stuff being done out of the VP's office and things like the Rural Electrification Agency, trying to bring renewable energy to the rural areas, as well as even support the urban areas in terms of energy generation. One of the biggest problems, as you know, what we have in Nigeria today is production of energy. The amount of emissions that you actually get through diesel generators and petrol generators is not just even having climatic issues, it's also got health issues as well. And so across the board, these are some of the things we're trying to obviously move away from. So a lot of the policies you will find coming out of the central government, I'm talking about federal, is basically creating opportunities for the private sector as well to invest in things like energy generation, energy efficiency, transportation, your BRT buses, for instance, which is mass transit, is also as a climatic reaction, if you will, to contributing to reduction of climate change, because you're moving more people using single buses rather than all of us being on the roads at the same time. So there are a number of things that are going on, either at the federal level or state level, to create an enabling environment, if you will, for either the investment of or even the starting of businesses around all the infrastructure bases, such as I said, water provision is one. Flood management, you mentioned Lagos especially being only a slight a meter above sea level. Yeah, we have to start thinking about the way we design our properties. We have to start thinking about how we create flood barriers around the Lekki areas. One of the ones that we've done so far is the extension of the Eco Atlantic. That was a flood defense project, if you will, to protect Victoria Island, which has always been flooded for the last 50 years, as I can remember. So, there's a lot of policies going on to support all of this effort, but all told, we need to direct patient finance and concessional finance towards this effort, and I think that's where I sit.
Hello. Okay. It's Dennis. Dennis, yes. Same question. Yes. Thank you so much, Olumide. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Can you just mention the question again?
The question was, what policies currently are in place or in action towards climate change in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa that you're aware of?
Okay, so yeah, basically, I think Olumide mentioned NDCs, which almost every country, I think almost every country have their own NDCs that they're working with. We at IFC actually are working with not just Nigeria, but
Sorry,
then,
Dennis, what are NDCs? We don't have quite an expert audience sometimes, so maybe you will tell us what
they are nationally determined contributions. So these are goals that each country sets in as their strategy to tackle the climate change menace in their country. So every country sets their own particular targets or their own strategy, how they are going to go about it. Yes, and what we at IFC do is we try to work with these countries. If a country has set their own NDCs, we try to work with them to help them achieve some of these NDCs. But on the whole, what we see as the what runs through a lot of these NDCs, what we try to do is to tackle the aspect of green buildings. what can we do? Can we provide financial support? Can we provide the technical and advisory support for it? And then what we've also seen to be very important is creating awareness and capacity building, right? Because right from the word go, if people do not understand why it is even necessary to see climate change as very, very important, then you are wasting your time because they do not understand the need. They may think we are just trying to force on them something that does not exist, right? So there is that very, very key element in there: education, awareness raising, and then building the capacity of professionals to understand how they can go around it. Right? So that has been one of the main focus for IFC. And green buildings has been a very, very important department for us. Within the green buildings team, we have come up with a lot of measures. One of them includes our work with students. And I listened to the earlier session where they're talking about green careers and all that. It's very interesting because we did analysis for both Ghana and Nigeria, and we realized that students in the university, especially students doing architecture and engineering, the percentage that really understood green buildings was less than 10%, which is very, very worrying because these are people that will come out, become professionals, and would advise people on buildings. So if these do not even understand green buildings and climate efficient buildings, then it becomes really a big problem. So what did we do? We have started a program with the universities where right at the university stage, these students are taken through some elements of design, sustainable designs and green buildings, just to build their capacity. And when they come out of school, all they know is making sure their projects or their buildings that they design are climate-friendly buildings, right? So we do have a lot of other works that we are doing with government, where we also help them with building codes. So we help them come up with policies that would help in this fight against the climate change. One of the easy and simplest ones we do are incentives that create an enabling environment for developers to work. So, for instance, in Nigeria, the Lagos state government worked with one of our developers to come up with it was a 252 housing estate in Badagry, just outside Lagos. Right. This was mainly because that developer wanted to do climate-friendly projects. At the same time, it was going to be affordable. This project, these buildings were sold between 5 to 8 million naira. And you will bear with me that there are a lot of projects in Nigeria that are far more expensive than that. Right. So they were able to get that collaboration because it was green, and we really need a lot more policies like these. We do have similar in Ghana, where a particular city provides lower permit fees for projects that want to build sustainably. So yes, we work with these governments to come up with more of these things, and we think that would be the way to go. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Of course, and I'm not going to whine about time anymore, but I'm just going to say that thank you for that. I wanted to ask Olumide about, I'm aware of the green bonds being issued by, on the floor of the stock exchange, it's still a very rare thing to find green or climate sensitive finance. I remember looking through the stock exchange one time, the Nigerian stock exchange, and I found Access Bank had issued some green bond, and I know that those are one of the opportunities that I think exist within climate finance space, but what other opportunities exist in the green, in the climate finance space for those who are trying to access things like green bonds, because again, I think in this part of the world, it's still a very, very novel thing. So, but what opportunities exist aside of the ones that we probably already know in Europe? Yeah.
I mean, just to put things in perspective, yeah, currently we have over $1 trillion invested in climate-related issuance. Yeah. Now that's a market that literally started about 10 years ago and rapidly grew over the last 5 years. Having said that, you've only got short of 3.5 billion or so from Africa. So yes, you're right. It's still a bit novel, but I think we're ramping up very quickly. And the reason why that is, this was referenced earlier, it's all about knowledge and information. We've got taxonomies, criteria, and standards that specify what a green project is. We've got taxonomies around the type of information that you need to gather to actually justify that a project is green. So actually even understanding what a green project is a starting point. Yeah. Also, because once that information and that knowledge is bedded in, then we begin to look and identify more of this type of projects. So what sort of finance is available? The truth is there's a lot of money out there chasing green assets. In fact, we don't have enough green assets to meet the demand. Yeah. But a project has to meet a certain standard and has to meet certain criteria for it to be green. Now, you speak to Axis Bank. I actually helped worked on that. The sovereign has issued a couple of green bonds so far. We've got North-South Power, who have also issued a green bond. But those are just 4. But there's more. What you find actually is that there are more green loans coming out of the banks. Yeah. So I guess in terms of what's accessible to people is more the green loans, which would then subsequently be aggregated into green bonds much later. But let's just focus on what people can get at. There's concessional financing at the moment, yeah, which is being backed up by the CBN, the Development Bank of Nigeria, the BOI, Bank of Industry. They're providing concessionary loans for certain type of projects, be it in energy, be it in agriculture, waste management. But it's about bringing those projects to bear, and then find out more information about what type of finance is available. The long story short is simple for me. Yeah, a country that is currently growing at we are about 200 million Nigerians, of which at least 65% of that is below the age of 35. That tells you the growth rate of the country. We need to provide jobs and opportunities, be for self-employed people or even jobs through companies. So, the finance has to be available or made available to do all of this. The beauty is this: in actually pursuing more sustainable type projects, more climate related projects, you will create the jobs of the future that we can get involved in. Yeah. So, today we are generating power using generators. Yeah. Some of the fastest growing jobs, technical jobs, are solar panel install technicians, for instance. We will soon be making batteries in Nigeria. Only yesterday, I got some information about an inaugural project on charging points in Sokoto, yeah, for electric cars. So, sooner or later, we will start driving around electric cars. Somebody has to build those cars. Somebody has to assemble those cars. Somebody has to provide the energy for it. Yeah, we will have waste to energy projects. Somebody has to finance that. So, there is a lot of finance available, but we've got to spend more time educating ourselves on the projects that will qualify for those financing and actually make them bankable. Because ultimately, the banks would only lend to projects where they can manage the risks. So there's an element of risk there. So you've got to make your projects bankable by getting the right information and then align that with what the banks are trying to finance. And the more finance that is being made available within the system, pension funds from our pension funds and the likes, the easier it will be in the near future to finance some of these projects.
Great, thank you so much. I mean, I like what you said about there's a lot of fun. I mean, there's not even enough assets or enough projects to soak up the amount of finance available in the market, and I think that's a very, very valid point. And that's because of the lack of probably a lack of understanding of the terms. You mentioned taxonomy, and I know that Dennis does, and this is our final question so that we round up this panel. I know Dennis and the IFC do a lot of work in EDGE certification and EDGE, training people to be experts so that we can understand this thing you call the taxonomy that makes a project less risky and de-risk, of course, projects and makes projects accessible to finance. So do you want to tell us quickly, Dennis, in just maybe in 90 seconds, how, if that is possible, I know it's impossible, please try, how the paths that people can take to becoming, to understand how these terms that can make an investment, a real estate, project, green worthy or worthy of green capital. So take us through, how possible it is to become EDGE certified as a building and as an expert. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we at IFC have had the same problems too. We've gone to banks, and banks tell us that okay, we are willing to fund green projects, but we are not getting them. We cannot find a green project, and that's I mean, goes to emphasize my point that we need to create a lot more awareness, and basically that's what EDGE tries to do. Now with EDGE, once a project is certified, that's branding is available for that project for them to use in acquiring some financing. We work with the Climate Bond Initiative as well, where we've helped some other organizations to launch some green bonds. I mean, the popular example is the one in Kenya, where Acorn was able to launch their first green bond for Kenya and all that. But basically, for EDGE, we look at three standards: energy, water, and materials. It's backed by a software, making it very easy and simple for anybody at all to look at what measures can actually qualify as green. Because people sometimes do not even understand what green is, but then this software is able to help you and then guide you to do that. Now, once you're able to meet the standard, you can submit the project for the EDGE certification, and you can get the label, and now you can use that label to brand your project as green. It also allows you to acquire funding from either IFC or from any of our partners or any other financial institution that's interested in supporting green projects. Now, we also have that educational side where we help professionals to become EDGE experts. We train them, we get them to understand the processes involved in green buildings and how they can help developers to certify their projects. And once they pass their exams, we give them that accreditation and they're able to practice as EDGE experts. We put their details on our website so that people can directly get in touch with them, right? So I hope I've not exceeded your 90 seconds anyway. Yeah, but I mean, I really want to stress on the fact that education and awareness raising, capacity building is very, very key if we are to really move ahead in this, because we may think there is, I mean, everybody understands what we're saying, but I mean, even though there are a lot of information out there, people still do not understand how to put all of these things together in order to access the necessary funding.
Okay, so let me help you very quickly, and I know Dennis is focused mainly on buildings, which obviously is an area of interest for him. Green projects cut across a wider range of infrastructure gamuts, if you will: energy, transportation, water, building, land use, where obviously agriculture and forestry comes in, industry, waste management, pollutions, and even ICT. Yeah. Now, very quickly, just to give you some perspective of where you can find information, the International Capital Markets Association, which we call ICMA, have actually got a set of green bonds principles, which are a set of guidelines for what constitutes a green project. So those are just guidelines to guide you. And you would typically get an independent verifier to give you a second opinion on what is a green project for it to be financed, so or be able to get a green loan. Climate Bonds Initiative is the only organization that has actually got a climate bond standard, which is a set of scientifically driven criteria. So if you go onto the Climate Bonds Initiative website, climatebonds.net, you will find and go to the standards page, you will find a list of all the criteria that needs to be met for you to be able to certify either a loan or bond green. That would also give you, as a starting point, an entry into what sort of projects you should be looking at if you wanted to go to a bank, for instance, to get financing for your projects. So there's information out there. There's plenty of information about just getting a better understanding of it. So my advice will be simply this: go online, find out more information. I know we were talking about the jobs earlier. If you think about what projects actually mitigate or help you adapt to climate change, then you begin to see what projects are getting financed. That tells you what sort of skill set is required, for those type of jobs or projects in the future. And that begins to give you an idea of what sort of jobs are likely to come up and what sort of skill set. And by all means, think about it. Even though you can sit in Nigeria and learn about all of this stuff, these projects are all over the world. So your learning, if you will, is not just for Nigeria alone, even though there's plenty to do in Nigeria. Trust me, there is plenty to do. All you have to do is just look around you, whether you're converting bottles all around the place, plastic, congestion, waste, pollution, it's all around you. Buildings, another one. You said Lagos potentially could be underwater in another 20, 30 years. We need to start redesigning our properties, to actually take that into consideration, which means new skills are required to build those type of properties. And those are the kind of jobs that you need in the future. So even the architectural jobs will change. The engineering jobs will change.
Absolutely.
We can go on and on and on, but look, time is limited.
Yeah. I think, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate Angel has dropped off the call. I'm sorry for our listeners who we hoped that would ask a final question, but I think this is where we're going to end it. I want to really thank Dennis. I want to thank Olumide as well for joining this panel, the Green Cities, Businesses, Policies and Investment panel. Thank you for unmasking. I know we can't have this debate in one day. It's an ongoing thing that we have to have over and over till we get to that point of where we're comfortable with bequeathing the earth that we're living into the next generation. So I'd like to again thank our listeners all at home. We're now rounding off the webinar, panel 2, and I also want to thank the earlier panel. British Council has pages on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram that you can follow. And they also have great scholarships for those who want to go into certain areas, some of the areas we've mentioned. You can visit their website who want to get scholarship into, I think, British universities in some of the areas and the future jobs that we've mentioned. It's 2:23 here in Lagos, Nigeria. I don't know what time it is wherever you are, Olumide and Dennis. But from me, have a great Friday and enjoy your Friday night from me in Lagos.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.